well, here we're the great white saviors, and we're going to give you water where you didn't have it. So, or even as I was talking with the team yesterday, some of the team, I'm even almost a little nervous to say, well, our God, in case they have a different one at the time, because we're looking for pastors, so we've got a really good sort of setup that pastors and us are a little more on the same page. But I don't even want to come in there and before we've done something for the people and say, here, you need our God. Well, they had that back in the day, and they ended up on reservations and broken treaties. So this is a very interesting time on this. The Uganda wells, we're going to still drill 6 wells a month now. This is the first month we're doing 6 wells. 6 more will happen in May. So we've got the Uganda wells, just like a well-oiled machine. Every month we're going to drill 6 new freshwater wells in 6 different villages. And so we're happy about that, but it's a little trickier over here. The more laws and regulations and guidelines, and I suppose tribal councils and different things like that that have to be voted on to get these things done. So, but we appreciate your prayer. Remember that we had given you a email address yesterday. It was wells@elijahstreams.com. If you know of a pastor at a First Nations of any of the tribes, there it is, wells@elijahstreams.com. Be sure we've got 5 or 6 referrals since yesterday, where you give us a pastor who would probably know where the needs are on their reservation for freshwater wells, or even anything concerning water on their property. That's kind of where our heart is, to provide water where it's needed. So be sure and just right there at Wells, and that comes into Dennis Wilhelm, and he'll disperse it to the people that are sent to research it. All right, I don't have any more announcements, so let's bring in Robin Bullock. We are on episode number 40 with, and this is technically, hey, Robin, good to see you.
Shalom. It is good to see everybody.
So we finally got to episode 40, which is we decided, based on you've got a very busy schedule, that this ends the weekly shows, but you're still going to be coming on once in a while.
Oh yeah.
So we'll still,
you might find it hard to get rid of me, Steve.
We don't want to get rid of you. So I know the people love you very much, and all the teaching, So, well, you've got a whole new setup there. Tell us about what you got going there.
Well, I'm talking to you today from the fortress. This is the fortress right here.
Awesome.
And this is a new studio we've been working on for a long time now. And so this is the very first broadcast from here.
Awesome.
And I thought it would be great to do it with the Elijah stream,
That's so good.
We're tweaking it, we're getting it together, but we really like it.
We appreciate you letting us be the first. That's nice of you to do that. But, I know you intended to get it done before. We built 2 studios in the past, and it never quite goes as fast as one wants to.
That's the truth.
Everywhere
and
from
then
money.
I was telling Dave, the audio guy, this morning, I said, all this high-tech equipment, I was looking around at everything. And then I looked over, and they had this camera sitting on a cardboard box.
That's just hilarious.
I said, we look around at all this high-tech equipment, and there's the cardboard box.
Yeah. It's like, that makes me think of when we brought my brother, who is a videographer, cinematographer, whichever word, to Israel, and we found the last trip, which was on, I think, 2019. We're going to do it again soon, probably next year, but he found that we had a nice quality iPhone with 1080 resolution. We finally were using this thing at the Western Wall and got pictures. And we had some really nice DSLR cameras, but this was easier, and the sound.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it? It just showed great.
Yeah. So it's I was a portrait photographer out of school, and I did wedding photography. I should say while I went to school, and sometime after that. But now you can get on these phones, you can get much better quality portrait. You should have seen the heavy 645, these large format cameras. And so
I've seen John shoot a music video in Nashville. He used a phone for part of it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's amazing. So, so you have more than one. What are your different studio setups?
We have the 11th hour. People watch us on the 11th hour, and that's when the whole band, the whole team is here. So it'll be on a new studio come Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then this whole place is the fortress. And it's in an undisclosed location. because we need it for the content we talk about and different things. And I'm planning on some brand new prophetic streams that are going to be that we can do in great detail here that we could not do over at the other place at the church. Cool. And so I want to do some sequence things, like actually come and do a 20-minute special maybe on a prophecy that's unfolding.
I would love that. We would love that. Even if it was a special that wasn't scheduled and we put it in the afternoon, some of our studios that our shows that we do in the afternoon, even on a Rumble, which is supposedly less than, I hate to tell, I hate to brag about it, but we're taking business from YouTube.
That's all right.
Yeah,
that's all right. The things I'm talking about too, Steve, is like I wanted the freedom. I believe the Lord wanted me to be able to come in and show what I wanted to show. And it's just like, you remember on that January the 6th thing where we went up to DC and people watched in that video, Boots on the Ground.
Yeah.
By the way, which was all shot with a phone,
Crazy.
But Boots on the Ground, when I walked up to that reflecting pool, and held that staff out like that, and all of that broke loose when I called for the sea to divide and everything. Well, what people may not realize right now is we're getting reports in now that the reflective pools are dry.
Really?
They've drained them, the water turned black, and they just went dry. And so now, after we ordered the sea to part, then now it's dry.
That's
where we held that rod out.
Well, there's your prophetic thing, walking through dry land. Okay,
that's right. And so now, and see, symbolically that day, I walked around the pool to the other side, and now little did I know that this much time has passed, and now it's dry. You could actually walk.
And I'm going to ask you a question about number 46 here in a second, but might this be a timing clue?
Oh, yeah.
If the pool's dry, that means it's time to cross over, right?
And see, that shows you how far ahead the prophetic was moving. Yeah. See, we were that far ahead in time, and real time has to catch up with it. So I've already been on the other side, remember, and stretched my staff out and ordered it to close.
Yeah.
So now if we were that far ahead on the dividing of it, now look where we are on the closing of it. So we're ahead in the spirit and the natural starting to catch up. And I'm going to tell you something. Things are about to really change politically. And I believe we're in that time. If people want to use the word season, that's fine. But we're at that moment now.
Yeah, you don't. So you're saying you can use the word season if you want, just to cover your assets. But what you mean is you're not using the word seasons because we're there now.
Yeah, people don't understand how the prophetic works, or they never would ever have really questioned what prophets saw. See, the prophetic it works according to Isaiah 46:10, that God declares the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times, the things that haven't happened yet. So it goes to the end from the beginning, and then back to the end, to the beginning toward the end. So what happens is that you go into the future, you see the ending of it. Then you start declaring it from the beginning, and the prophetic word lays the road for the end to come into sight.
Yeah.
And see, people expected the end to be at the beginning.
Yeah, we all did, and especially
but that's not the way it works.
Especially both of us, well, two of us, that we honestly believe that maybe God, if He didn't do it on the January 20, by January 20, maybe there'd be one other thing, and then here we are a year and a couple months later.
Yeah, but see, like right now, I held that rod out over the water.
Yeah,
and now it's just now in the physical, it dried. It just dried up. It turned black first, which black water represents prophetic.
Okay.
It would represent mysteries in the water. And they drained it. And so now it's dry. And that was a year and some odd days later. Now it actually physically dried up.
Well, I want to ask you a question about a word you gave related to all this. And of course, now you're talking about God is He's outside of time, so He could be at the end and see exactly what's happening right now as He's forming Adam from the dust of the ground. He already sees the book of Revelation and how it ends, right? He's seeing it all. Okay, so in the middle of all this, you said, not a few months back, 2 or 3, 4 months back, you said, if they don't remove, I'll just say 46 right now. If they don't remove him, God says, I will remove him. Okay, now we're at
Yes.
a time way past when our
Mhm.
logical minds that have logically concluded he should have been removed by both God, man and God.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, but see, here's the thing. Now they're actually talking about removing him.
Okay,
They wasn't even talking about it before,
yeah,
but now it's getting ridiculous.
yeah,
It's getting to the place where they're going to have to remove him. But I will tell you something, and I'm just going to lay it out here, and
yeah,
I'll try to say it in code since we are on YouTube.
yeah,
But see, people wonder if they wanted to see who's really in charge. I gave a prophetic word that there would come a time, and you may remember this, where I said it won't be lit up behind the podium, the very podium that the seal fell off of. In other words, it had
yeah. It
the
rolled
seal.
away or something, right?
Yeah,
Didn't it?
so he walks up behind it just a few weeks ago and stand. I don't know if he meant to say it. I mean, or he didn't. But
Well, I know
Jen Sock.
when you watch the replay, he at least covers it as I'm just joking, but
Now he wasn't
really no.
joking. He
Okay,
wasn't joking, Steve. And
okay,
when before that, Jen Psaki said, "Well, I saw the people fawned over him all at
yeah,
once."
yeah.
They wouldn't see. They know he's still in charge.
And the thing about it is that people were watching. They were in, I don't know, back there trying to get into the circle.
Yeah,
They wouldn't
yeah.
let him in the
No,
circle. There
no,
was literally
no.
a circle, and he's running, tapping over it. I don't know
Yeah.
who it was, but it looked like I don't
Well,
know.
him and Harris stuck together like. But see, you remember, people need to start. We really need to. Would you be up for a third term? He said, if I could sit in a basement and put an earpiece in somebody's ear and tell them what to do, he said, I'd totally be up for that. And then saying he's the president, and now suddenly he shows up but then appearing with, and I had given this word a while back that I said to someone, I said, wouldn't it be time until the people accept him being the president again?
Okay, but now I hear everyone shouting at the screen, no, that's not possible because the Constitution wouldn't allow it. So what? And yet, as a prophet, you can prophesy all kinds of things. If God says it, he says it, right? So where do you weigh in with that?
What I've said about him so far has happened.
Okay.
And he made a surprise visit. He did exactly what was said. But here is the thing. You're dealing with people who trample the Constitution on a daily basis. And they can do anything they want to do, and nobody stops them. Has anybody noticed that?
Yeah.
Nobody stops them. Have you not noticed? And here's the thing, Steve. The power moves these people are making could not be made if all players from both sides of the aisle wasn't in on it. There's no way they could make these power.
That is flipping scary, though.
Without everybody involved, Steve.
Well, and we had Mel K. I don't know if you know who Mel K. is, but she said of all the players in D.C., she says there's probably 10. I think her number was 10. I don't remember. She said on the air or off the air. There's 10 righteous ones, and she wasn't trying to make a statement about Abraham.
I said 7 or 8.
Really?
Yeah.
So, wow, go ahead.
And I never heard them say that, but I said 7 or 8, something like that. And I believe it's 7. And so well, actually, I believe it could be 7 or 8, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What I want to say is this about this, that nobody could be making the power moves they're making without everybody lending their support, Steve. Just look at it. What you're dealing with is a circus. This is a big circus. The bearded lady, that is the transgender person who stood up and took over the health care.
You're right. This is the circus.
Yeah. That's a bearded lady. Then we have the clowns. The biggest attraction to this whole circus is the trained elephants. All the trained elephants that are involved are amazing. You can watch them. They come out, they're all trained elephants. People like to see elephants in a circus, and they're watching the trained ones right now. And you understand what I'm saying by trained elephants.
Yeah, this is the GOP are the
That's
elephants.
right. Yeah, and they're being, and the biggest show is the trained elephants led by donkeys. That's amazing in this circus, and everybody's watching it. And so you're seeing these trained, and now they don't like rogue elephants. Rogue elephants are people like Madison Cawthorn. They don't like him because he comes in with them ears moving, man, and them that he's not dancing to anybody's tune. But you can tell the rogue elephants that are involved. You can see them. You can watch them. You ain't never seen a show like you see when you see people like Graham come out and talk. You see a bunch of trained elephants.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't let anybody fool you. None of this, people would be in jail if it wasn't for people in the elephant camp, all behind it with the donkeys. They're all together. This is the greatest show on earth. And now you're watching a big lie of nations. You're in the time of the lie. And these nations have all come together. They think they've pushed off the scene. They had one more world player they had to turn the world against to get him out of the way, and that's Putin. They had to do that because he would never accept a one world government or a new world order. They don't even think it says there's going to be a new world order and we've got to lead it. Then one of the ladies, a member of Ukrainian parliament, said there's going to be a new world order and we've got to stand up for it, all of us that are trying to bring this new world order into being. All they're talking about is a one world government. You've got an actor leading the Ukraine. You've got this is the greatest show on earth that has ever been seen right now.
Man, wow.
And this is why he recognized fake news. He knows what's a show and he knows what's not a show. And that's what made him the greatest president we've ever known, is because he knows the difference between right and wrong, truth and a lie. And so we're watching this greatest reality show on earth take place right now. The thing that I think puts that God is absolutely, he don't like any of it. But I'm going to tell you something that really don't sit well with him, is that of innocent people. That's the reality that makes the show sell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and this is harking back to Baal and all the Baal worship, and I think it's HR 2223 out of California, where they're trying to legalize. I don't know what happened overnight, if that got kicked down or not. The infanticide up to something like 7 to 14 days after birth, you're not allowed to prosecute a woman for what happens to her baby.
Well, what was it in Colorado? Is it Colorado somewhere they just kill it or not?
Can we even believe that those sounds are going into our ears?
Okay.
I can't even believe this, Robin.
Do you remember a word the Lord gave me? And I gave that word. I said that they're trying to push it up to 2 years. They'll push it up to 2 years one day. That'll through the firstborn males into the Nile. They're trying to push it to the days of Herod. And now they've got it to 28 days.
I mean, Robin, in my wildest imaginations, I never conceived that it could get, you did, you're way out in front of it, but I never conceived that evil could get this evil before God finally intervenes.
Well, see what's happening. Go ahead. No, what's happening is that if I could really, and that's one reason I'm in the fortress now. This is one reason we got over here, so I could start putting some of this together for people. I'm going to tell you things, you and I have to talk in code and others have to talk in code.
By the way, hold that thought just for a second. Robin, next time, while you're talking, I'm seeing you the next time you come on, no code, and we're getting 150,000 on some of these views on a Rumble. We need to go to Rumble with you, and you need to say exactly what you want to say going forward after this. Yeah, so go ahead now.
So what we're dealing with is, people remember, this is the time of the big lie. It's the big lie. You've never been in a place, even a fake White House. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about the time of the big lie, reality shows. You're talking certain spaces. You're talking about fake things that you've never seen before, that the average person won't know that it's dangerous to them all. And so, so you're looking at the big circus. Let's keep that in our minds. This is the big circus, and it's all brought to you by George Soros Incorporated, and all of this stuff is going on. It ought to run red flags up on people's thinking when you hear George. I'm going to tell you something, man. If anything George Soros is on the side of, you better look at it, because this man was. He's a priest. I think I was looking at pictures when he was like 14 or 15. He was one of those youth of you as human shields.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he
Mm-hmm.
said that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're looking at a big show. The thing that in the South we'd say chaps my rear end is that they would make their show believable. And to those people, they're living in hell so that they could bring a new world order on the scene. Now you think about that. And they're trying their best to push something in before it's time. Now, remember I said this. I said when I was in Texas when they did this, this phony inauguration, and I was in Texas with it, and when that happened, and Robin showed her phone to me and said, "Look, they just did this." I said, I was in a meeting, so I couldn't talk loud. I just looked over at her, and the Lord spoke to me and said, the office of the president has been vacated. There is now a jackal sitting in his seat. And I had never heard that.
Yeah.
I heard it from the Lord. So I started calling him a jackal at that point. Well, I've called him a jackal for all these years, or these 2 years. And has it been that long?
It's like, it's been basically all of 20, right? Or is it 21? What?
Yeah.
It's a full year is 21, basically, and then a few months here. So it's about a year and a couple months. Yeah.
Man, it's been the longest.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
It feels like forever.
And so anyway, and it goes to show you if this wasn't real, this would go away. And so if it wasn't true. So I started calling him a jackal. Well, one day I'm studying the word all this time later, what felt like years. And I look at the scripture and it dawns on me that Jesus called Herod a fox. He called him a fox.
He did.
Well, when I look up the word Jew, he said he was the king of the Jews, but he wasn't even a Jew. He was illegitimate, Steve. And so that's why the Lord told me a jackal was sitting in the seat of the White House, because it's an illegitimate person. And now watch this. Now I'm just going to go ahead and tell you something. This is a big show. And all the trained elephants, they work for the Jackal's network. There is a network that's named after a jackal.
Oh, Fox.
And they're the very ones that called the jackal the president first.
They are. And
they're the very first one. They went ahead. They cheated to do it. They didn't even have the info in, Steve. And they called him a jackal. I mean, they called him the president. Well, that's the Jackal Network. And now I'm seeing trained elephants show up on that network.
Wow.
Don't fool yourself. The ones you think are your friends are the very ones that betrayed you to start with.
Yeah.
There's
one reliable, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. He's on at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in our time. What is it? Tucker Carlson. He seems to be like they've allowed him to stay to make them.
Well, they all seem to be like that. All of it seems to be like that. But let me tell you something. Remember, that network is the one that named the jackal.
Yeah, they said when Arizona gave it to him, he's.
And there ain't nobody on there. There's nobody on there that are not saying what they let them say, and there's nobody on there not playing the game.
That's true.
If you're going to not play the game, stand up and be a voice. I guarantee you, they're only saying that they lost all their viewers. People left them in by the hordes and tried to build him up so that they could get their viewers back. Well, I don't.
That's interesting. Well, you know what? You're probably right. I'm
sure.
Yeah, we're losing it. We better pretend to be conservative again.
Sure, they pretended to be to start with, but the first time the spirit of the Antichrist came close to running everything, they jumped on board with him. And then when they saw that it wasn't time yet and the people wasn't going to support it, they ran right back to their foxhole and started saying, "Oh, we're for you, we're for you." But they're jackals. They don't fool me. I don't sweat them.
Well, in one sense, and in a very real sense, the worst of the bunch, worst of all the fake news would be the jackals in Fox, because they're pretending to be. And I mean, I'm sure there's some good people that work there. I don't know, but there must be some good people. But by and large, like the way you said it was a mouthful of accuracy. You said there's no one there that's saying anything except what they're being allowed
they let
to say.
them say.
Yeah.
And it's not the people, everybody that works there probably, but anybody that goes in front of a camera, they either play the game or they're fired.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is, and they know it. I can't tell you some things on the air because I don't have the permission to. But some of them have been confronted with it and said, look, I have to say what they tell me or they'll fire me. And they say, but if I leave, they'll just have a certain voice left. I mean, at least I'm something. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not something. You're a compromise. And what has to be, if you're going to say the truth, say the truth. Let me tell you something, brother. This is a bold statement, I know. But if we didn't have a herd of trained elephants involved, they could remove that man from the White House tomorrow morning. They could have him gone tomorrow and put the rifles, because they all know what happened. And there's no way that Hillary Clinton wouldn't be in jail if everybody on both sides of the aisle wasn't playing the same game. There's no way that some of these people wouldn't be and would have already fallen, and you would have already had everybody wasn't on the same page. You're only looking at about 7 or 8 people, maybe 10. That's even righteous. And when Madison Cawthorn stood up the other day and told them what D.C. was about, don't you remember that report that came in?
I don't think I saw. I didn't. It was really right.
Yeah, I mean, he can't be controlled. He came into D.C. and told everybody. He told everybody what they offered him and what they tried to get him to do when he got there.
Wow.
And man, it just blew up everywhere when he exposed the immorality of it. And then somebody that works for the Jackal Network came on and said, you need to apologize or prove it. Well, see, they're all playing the same game. They're playing the same game, brother. And if this was the days when George Washington and John Adams and all of them was still on the scene, they'd have already drugged the Jackal out of the house. They had already taken him out of there, taken everybody else with them. We don't need a new Declaration of Independence. We don't need a new Constitution. We need the ones we have enforced.
Is there some strategy on their part where they know they're afraid of Harris because she's worse yet? And
yeah,
I mean, I don't even know. I mean, this is just my flesh to be. We're in worse shape with because I believe she's as evil as they come. I'm sorry, but I do.
You have to remember something too, that now I'm just going to say this again.
Okay.
People could not be making the power plays they're making without a majority of people on both sides enforcing it, Steve. They could get away with this without major players they decide to change things. Suppose all of them that are working together suddenly decide that there needs to be another president. Suppose they could put somebody else in. Suppose they decide suddenly that there don't need to be a president at all. There just needs to be an oligarchy or something like that, an oligarch. But suppose they just decide there's just going to be together and just sing Kumbaya around a campfire and everybody be together. Just suppose they do that. I want to ask you a question. What do you think the American people would do?
Well, the hope and prayer is that we've been awakened enough that we.
But what do you think they would do? Nothing.
I don't know.
Nothing. There would be nothing done at this point. Nothing done. Because if anybody was going to stand up, they'd already be standing. They say, well, the military would never turn on us. Really. Police are dragging people out of their cars and houses now. So what do you think's going to happen? There's got to be a revival take place. There has to be, the righteous people in Washington are going to have to stand up and scream, enough is enough. We're not going any further. And start exposing the proof they have. And if they're really patriots, even if it incriminated themselves, they would say, I'm not going to watch a nation go down.
Mm.
You think about it. Remember I gave a prophetic word from the Lord about there would be newscasters, major newscasters step down from position.
Mm.
And right after that, who was it who did a program, The 11th Hour? What was his name? Was it Brian Williams?
Chris Wallace? You talking about Chris Wallace?
No, Chris Wallace stepped down. It was Brian, I think. and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but he came on and gave his farewell speech. You ought to look at that, play that sometime. You know, did you notice what he said in it?
Yeah, no, I'd have to look it up, but
He said, and I've got it on a prophecy that I gave.
yeah.
He said, they're going to burn the house down with all of us in it. He said that. He said, people think I'm a Democrat because I'm here, or he said, I'm a constitutionalist. And he said, they're planning on burning this house down and with all of us inside it. And he said, I can't stand by for that. He said, so I'm going to resign. And when he got through ripping them up on a liberal network, he said, I'll show myself out. And he told everybody goodbye. But he basically told them there's powers that be and things going on that you know nothing about. And he said they're doing all of this and thinking we will forget who was behind it all. Now think about it, Steve. All of this is going on, and there's something very sinister happening. They are trying, in my opinion, to bring in the power of a new world order, to bring in the Antichrist at some point, that he'll come in on that new world order. And they honestly plan on bringing it in 2022.
I totally absolutely believe you and all that has been their plan, including world depopulation and all of that stuff. So, but now as we're getting, more than halfway through, can you bring some hope in, and what would that hope look like? Because we've been hanging on, we've been waking up, we've been passing around the videos. People are far more awake, at least in our particular network, where you can get 100,500 on many of our shows because they're all passing this around and their friends are joining.
Sure.
But what then shall we do is the cry.
Well, here is the thing. Okay, let me say something to you a minute.
Okay.
That even the Great Tribulation period, when it comes, won't last forever. I mean, think about it. That's when Satan has his widest expression of power on the earth, whenever that happens, and it won't last but 7 years. And only 3.5 of it is called the Great Tribulation. See, they're making all their plans right now. They're doing all of this stuff, but they forget something. They forget something. That we have, the body of Christ will pray. The anointing is present. The declarations and prophecies have been spoken. There is no way they will succeed in this. There's just no way. And what we're doing is what the body of Christ ought to be doing is preparing for victory.
That's good.
I think everybody, there's people watching us right now that are talking about mayors, city councils, school boards, things like that. They ought to run and take over these offices. They ought to start there, and you will squeeze out everything else in the middle. But I want to tell the body of Christ something. All I've told you is what their plans are. But now whether they're going to succeed, that's another thing. They will not succeed. This thing is not time for it. It's not going to happen yet.
That's good.
You're about his ankles from his place, because he is not going to, he'll never be able to do what he's doing. And now even their own people, but they're preparing to have their own party ruled thing, because that's what's happening now. But they can't last. This is the thing. The Ukraine is about to be exposed. All this stuff is about to happen. You're about to see, I believe, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Netanyahu don't walk back in office soon. Now, that just would not surprise me.
And that would be awesome.
Yeah, and then you're about to see some things. If think you've heard the last of DJ, everybody's mistaken. Now, I'm going to tell you a prophetic dream I had the other night.
Yeah.
And if I tell you I saw something, I saw it.
We know you. Yeah.
My staff that you see hanging behind me on this stand right here, it has a presidential seal, the great seal of the United States on the front of it. It's right up under, when you see the eagle head, there's leather wrapped around that. And then right up under it is the great seal, where I received a prophetic commission to be a prophet of this nation. And so I was dreaming the other night. And remember, I had that in one because I heard a conversation that he had. You want me to just tell it?
Yeah, please do. Yes.
I heard the conversation they had one night, and I couldn't tell it back then. And I saw him, and I heard him talk in a closed room. And I knew something had happened. And something, and I heard him talk. He said, now, by God, I am the only one. And something had happened, and I was able to give a word to somebody. And I believe it stopped it. But he said, by God, I'm the only one now left. In other words, there is no question, I'm him.
Well, and in that proclamation that you overheard in the spirit.
Oh, I heard it. I heard it like...
and that you heard, he's saying, by God's, I'm the only one standing. He's actually saying, and he's made it that way. That's what that proclamation was.
No, I didn't take it that way. Yeah. I took it as downright old-fashioned Southern bywords.
Okay, all right.
You know, and it was like this. It was like he finally accomplished. He said, now, by God, I'm the only one. Now, people listening to me said, brother, you're talking pretty rough. Well, you know, what did you come to see? A reed shaking in the wind somewhere? I mean, you know, we're fighting for the life of a nation.
Yeah.
And so I saw in that dream, my staff went down. The Lord said, the prophets will hold his place until he comes. And so I knew he's coming by that time. Now, the other night I had this dream that presidential seal on the front of my staff, I reached to pick up my staff and it came off. And when it came off, I took it and pushed it back down and held it there with my hand. And so when I woke up the next morning, I went straight to my staff and I got 2 little gold nails and I nailed it to the staff where it can't come off. And the Lord said, that's what sees happening. They're trying to take it, separate the prophets from the nation. And I pushed it and forced it back on.
Wow.
And the Lord told me, he said, now that you've nailed that staff, see, that you've nailed it back on, it'll never be removed again. And so we won this thing, Steve.
Wow.
We've won it.
You know, Robin, have you shared that part with anyone before?
No.
Because what you said a minute ago, it's weird. I heard it it's like a third hand. I think I know who they were talking about, but Julie, our producer, said it. He said, a prophet, this was his name. I won't say it now because I have to verify it. And he said something like this, the prophets are holding, it may not be this exact, Julie, but it was like they're holding his place. And when he comes back, then he will become the prophet he was meant to be. It was something like that. The prophets were holding it. It was very similar to what you just said.
Well, I never knew that. And I never heard that. The Lord showed me that in a series of dreams. And most of the time, you know, when he gives me a prophetic word, he just gives it to me. I'll hear it. And sometimes I can be under the anointing and I hear conversations. And I heard that conversation. Wow. That first one I told you. I heard it, and I even said in a prophecy, I said, I heard your plans. I told you what you were going to do. And then I heard this. I said this. I said, if you mess with me, I'll tell exactly what you said. Because I heard it. I knew when I heard it. And see, you don't curse a king or the rich in your bedchamber, because a bird of the air will carry the voice, and he that hath wings will tell the matter. Robin called me up the other day, or texted me and said, did you notice if the battle's over Twitter? Said, he that hath wings will tell the matter.
Oh, interesting.
A bird of the air.
Oh, look at that.
Voice. And so that's why they're so scared. If Twitter falls into the wrong hands, then conversations will be told.
Oh, wow.
And it'll be told by the bird.
Oh, you're right. I mean, that's a very,
right.
The symbolism then became the reality.
That's exactly right.
all
Man,
kinds of
that's a good
secrets.
word.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
when symbolism becomes reality, prophecies are fulfilled. And so this is what we're looking at. All the viewers, be encouraged, because the end we declared from the beginning, I only see about that much of the gap left to finish the road to the final picture. And we're headed there now. If
So
they can't get it done in
yeah.
2022, Steve, they can't get it done. It's got to be done this year.
Well, and it's like I'm encouraged over this year, because more and more people, where we would get, if we had 5,000, we had a great show. And the numbers aren't the end all be all, but they do indicate people being awake and listening and learning. And so when so many people are saying what they're saying, and I think that we're over the target as believers, as there's a big enough core that are praying and declaring and decreeing. I certainly know I am in my private prayer life and decree life. When we're over the target, there's a feel, and we're going. The reason we feel it that way is because we're over the target. We're exposing them. We're talking about it. We're saying things right now on this YouTube that we've never said before
on this broadcast.
Yeah, and if they kick us off, oh well, because Rumble will just pick it right on up with Rumble, and now we'll be more specific and name more names.
Well, then you don't have to pull any punches.
No, not at all. So,
you know, the thing is that I don't hate anybody.
No.
And I'm not, you know, I don't run I can't prophesy out of feeling. But what you're looking at is people, you know, if we're not over the target, then I had somebody come to me the other day, a law enforcement official. He said, there's a fake van down there close to your house, you know. And it said it had bogus tags on it, and they're acting like they're a communication channel. And they're all around your house, driving around your house, trying to fool with things on a telephone pole. So what are they trying to do?
What are they trying to do?
Sure. And if you're not over the target, then what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing on stage, and I had just bought this new electronic watch. This huge, I mean, it's so nice. I read it because it was so high tech, and you know me, I wear my clocks, the hands move, you know. And so they really liked it. And I'm standing on stage, and all of a sudden, the keypad opens on it, and it starts dialing.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, it just starts dialing, and I stopped. Someone, and being a musician, I can recognize tones. I could go back and tell you the tones. I can find the numbers because I can hear the tones. I can hear what they're playing. To me, it's a tune, you know. And so when it did that, I stopped. I looked down at my arm, and I could even tell you the numbers, which I'm not led to do that. I didn't know I'd ever tell this on the air, but I'm telling you. And so then all at once, I took it loose while I'm preaching and threw it across the floor. And somebody tried to tap into my phone to hear communication. And so I just let the battery run down on it, and I've never worn it again.
Wow.
And so you're dealing in the time when powers that be are scared.
Well, we're getting to the point, and we're talking about being more and more specific on the things you might as well say into the air. Look, boys, I know you're listening. Watch Rumble next week. We're going to tell you everything you want to know, right?
They're listening, but I can only say what I hear my Father say.
Yeah.
You know, we have to do like Jesus. And he said, I only do say what I hear him say, and I only do what I see him do.
That's good.
And so that's why I moved into the fortress here. And so really that I can prepare things. I don't know if today has been the show we wanted for the last.
Well, I think it's probably been more than even we wanted. I mean, we were getting more specificity. I'll say that again, but I'm almost surprised Jeff or Michael haven't come on and said, guys, we're off the air with YouTube. And I mean, you can tell I have this attitude. It's like, oh, well, here we go, Rumble. Let's see. No, we're still on. Michael says we're still on.
Well, I hope the viewers, this was you know, I try to say as much as I can say.
Yeah.
But I hope they're receiving a lot out of this one, because this is the start of something new.
Well, and the bottom line, and can I just say this, the good
Sure.
news that you did it so well, Robin, you went right to the point and you said they're not going to succeed. I maybe
No,
I
they're
didn't get your
not.
quotes
No,
on it.
no,
Yeah.
no. They won't win.
So
They won't win
yeah.
this. Oh, and let me say this before we close
No,
today.
you no hurry. Go ahead.
You were talking about. I was listening to you talk about the Navajo,
Oh yeah.
and something before we came on. I wanted to, and this will encourage the people to know how that we are going to win. Okay. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how it ties together. Now everybody get their catchers out because see, my favorite people. I love people, and I think you know that.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
love people, and I can't stand to see people mistreated. I just don't like that,
That's good.
and especially if I know they're being mistreated and they don't.
Mm.
That really,
Oh, that's yeah.
I don't like that at all. And so, and Jesus don't either. He never did. But I remember when all of this first started. Now, this ought to encourage everybody. The native people in this country are so dear to me.
Mm.
I mean, they're just part of me.
So good.
And, I went up, I was invited to come and speak to the Crow. And I went up to the Crow Nation in Montana, Billings. And I was invited to speak to the Crow elders in a special meeting one morning. So I went there, and when you're dealing with especially the Crow, but the native people all together, they're full of prophets. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many prophets,
Wow.
and I'll tell you, I was in a meeting up there with them, and I had these names. Sometimes the day before, the Lord will say, write this name down, call it out in the meeting, and they'll be there, and I've done that. I was one night the Lord told me, he said, now when you go up to this meeting, this certain meeting, said there'll be somebody there famous for turning wrenches, and he said, now call that out when you get there. So I got up there. And I had me a mechanic all picked out, Steve. He was in the back, he had his cap on, and I thought, well, that's him. That's got to be him. And I said, all right, here's what the Lord says. There's somebody in the room famous for turning wrenches. Nobody came. My mechanic didn't move. He just looked around. He wasn't even thinking about it. Well, it didn't look like nobody was coming. And then this woman walks up. A woman walks up in front of the stage and says, well, I don't know. It might be me. She said, I was decorated by the Army for being a helicopter mechanic, and I've been on Nightline, and I've been on this, and I've been on that, all famous for turning wrenches.
Wow.
And so the
Wow.
Lord was able to minister to her whole family. He had prophetic words for all of them.
So
And
good.
so, yeah, and then the Lord will tell me things like, then that same meeting one time, he said, call out McDonald's. And so I said, I hear McDonald's, the hamburger place. McDonald's that's what I thought of anyway. And some lady just broke down crying over here. And it turned out that her fiance was brutally murdered a couple of weeks or so before, or however long before, at McDonald's
Oh
in
man.
that town. And the Lord was able to minister to her. Well, I was in the meeting with the Crow, and I had wrote down some names. And that next night, I spoke to the elders that morning. Well, the next night at their Esther banquet, I was going to call out these names. And they started coming up before I could call their names because
Really?
they're prophets.
Oh my
They were
goodness.
hearing what I was hearing. They just came up.
Hey, wow.
Well, that will make you really have to study before you go speak to the elders of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I said, Lord, what do I say to them in the morning? He said, translate this certain verse of scripture in Hebrew, and I will tell you what to say. So I did. He said, now that's what you say. So I got up there that next morning, and I'm looking into the eyes, some of the most prophetic, anointed eyes you've ever looked into the Crow. I love the Crow Nation. They're just, oh my goodness. And they adopted us in their family. They call me their son 8, especially verse 7. Said, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. And I looked at them, and the Lord said, after the great flood, when he got ready to put the earth back in order, to take it out of such chaos and put it back in order so that the Messiah could come, he said he turned and went to the crow to help him.
Very cool. Very cool.
And when I said that, man, it was during this time when it's in such chaos, to show you he's getting ready to put it back together. The first place he went to the crow.
Oh my goodness.
And I went
got
before
chills.
the crow. And the crow works with the dove. Did you notice that? Works
Yeah,
with
now
the
I do.
ghost. And Elijah, when Elijah was dealing with Jezebel, said when he went to the brook Kerith, which means cut, it means covenant. He said the ones that fed him was the crow. He went to the crow to work with the prophets, to show. And so I went to the